Любі грінченківці, любі студенти, любі викладачі Університету Бориса Грінченка, любі наші гості. Сьогодні ми зібралися на захід, зініційований професорами Flying University задля поглибленої співпраці американських і польських університетів з нашим Київським столичним університетом імені Бориса Грінченка.
Dear Grinchenko community, today we have gathered for an event initiated by the Flying University to deepen the cooperation of American and Polish universities with our Grinchenko University.
Навесні 2022 року, у час повномасштабного вторгнення Росії в Україну, американські і польські науковці започаткували унікальний, абсолютно унікальний волонтерський проєкт Flying University for Ukrainian Students.
In the spring of 2022, during the full-scale invasion of Russia in Ukraine, American and Polish scholars launched a unique volunteer project, the Flying University for Ukrainian Students.
Авторка ідеї і провідна організаторка проєкту, професорка Нью-Йоркського університету Stony Brook University Izabela Kalinowska-Blackwood.
The author of the idea and the lead organizer of this project is Izabela Kalinowska-Blackwood from Stony Brook University.
Пані Ізабела є для нашого університету Бориса Грінченка координаторкою проєкту з американського і з польського боку, а з української сторони цей проєкт координую я, Юлія Вишницька, докторка філологічних наук, доцентка кафедри світової літератури Факультету української філології, культури і мистецтва Університету Бориса Грінченка.
So Izabela Kalinowska-Blackwood is the project coordinator from the American-Polish side, and for the Boris Grynchenko Kyiv Metropolitan University, it is coordinated by Yulia Vyshnitska, Doctor of Philology and Associate Professor at the Department of World Literature.
Упродовж близько 4 років студенти нашого університету, тобто від початку повномасштабного вторгнення Росії в Україну, студенти беруть участь у літніх і в зимових сесіях Flying University. А в 2024 році наш студент, наразі магістрант освітньої програми «Зарубіжна література та світова художня культура» Андрій Журба, став переможцем міжнародного конкурсу есеїв, організованих Flying University.
For about 4 years of the project, students of Boris Grynchenko Kyiv Metropolitan University have participated in the summer and winter sessions of the Flying University. And in 2024, our student, who is currently a master's degree student in foreign literature and world art culture program, Andriy Zhurba, he became the winner of the international essay contest organized by the Flying University.
Професори Flying University сьогодні розкажуть нам про можливості, унікальні можливості навчання в цьому безкоштовному для українських студентів університеті. Також ознайомлять із деталями вступу на, зокрема, зимову сесію Flying University, на яку вже, до речі, відкрито реєстрацію. Наша кафедра світової літератури ухвалила рішення запровадити систему зарахування модулів Flying University як варіативного компоненту дисциплін світова література, історія зарубіжної літератури та література Великої Британії. Умовою цього є отримання сертифікату.
Today, Flying University professors will tell us about study opportunities in the university's unique programs, and you can familiarize yourself with the details on the Flying University website. And the Flying University winter session is coming soon, and the registration is already open. And our Department of World Literature has decided to introduce a system for crediting Flying University's modules as a variable component of the world literature, history of foreign literature discipline, and the condition for this is obtaining a certificate.
Також сьогодні у нас буде унікальна можливість, нагода поспілкуватися з однією із професорок Flying University, пані Катажиною Бартошинською, яка розповідатиме про дуже цікаву книгу, українською перекладено як «Пограниччя» Глорії Анзелдуа. Можливо, хтось із вас уже ознайомився з цією книгою.
And also today we have the opportunity to speak with one of the university's professors, Miss Katarzyna Bartoszynska, who will talk about the book by Gloria Anzaldúa called Borderlands.
І передаю слово нашим любим гостям, пані Ізабелі Kalinowskiej-Blackwood і пані Каші Бартошинській. Дякую щиро.
And we welcome Miss Izabela and Miss Katarzyna, so you are feel free to start your speech.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Julia Wysznicka from Borys Grynchenko Metropolitan Kyiv University. We are very happy to be here. Thank you very much for the very generous introduction. I'm just going to briefly add that I co-founded the Flying University for Ukrainian students back in 2022, not long after Russia's full-scale invasion against Ukraine, with Andrzej Tymovsky, who unfortunately cannot be here today, but he's sending his best greetings to all. I would also like to note that our cooperation with Grynchenko has been very important. We admit students from all over Ukraine, but Grynchenko has always been there since the beginning. And we are very proud of our graduates who are either current students or former students of Grynchenko University. And I would like to note that in addition to Andriy Zhurba, we also actually have with us here today Veronika Kowal, who was also a recipient of the the Best Essay Prize, the FUUS Writing Prize. Veronika, in addition to that, participate in a conference organized in the United States, the largest professional conference for teachers of Slavic and East European languages, at which we organized a panel devoted to the Flying University. I'm so happy, I'm really overjoyed to hear about the possibilities, growing possibilities of our collaboration. Again, we are very happy to be here, and we continue. We hope that our collaboration is going to flourish in the future. I am now going to introduce Professor Katarzyna Bartoszynska. The Flying University would not be possible without the generosity of American university and college professors who volunteer their time to work with Ukrainian students. Professor Katarzyna Bartoszynska received her PhD from the University of Chicago. She is now Associate Professor of Literatures in English, as well as of Women, Gender and Sexuality Studies at Ithaca College. Her research, which is very comparative in nature, ranges from the 18th century to the present. It examines the novel as a form and various ways in which the novel has been theorized. She is the author of Estranging the Novel, Poland, Ireland, and theories of world literature. She's also a very active translator and has translated several works of a very important theoretician of modernity, Zygmunt Bauman. Professor Bartoszynska, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this generous introduction and for hosting us today. It's so exciting to see so many of you. And I'm really happy to tell you about our program a little bit and to talk a little bit about this book and the class that I teach or that I have taught now twice, and I don't know, maybe will again, we'll see. Maybe I'll start by telling you a little bit about the book and a little bit about the class and how the class is structured. And then maybe we will all talk a little bit about the book. We'll see. So the book is, because the class is only 5 days long, I wanted to have it be focused on just one text so that we could really kind of dive in and look at one thing closely in detail so that the reading list wouldn't, the amount of pages you would have to read wouldn't be too long. And when I started teaching in the program, there had specifically been a request for texts on kind of feminist theory. So I proposed a class on this book, Borderlands, La Frontera by Gloria Anzaldúa. Which is a classic, I think it's fair to say, a classic of feminist theory. It was published in 1987 and has been republished many times, a 10-year anniversary edition, 25-year anniversary edition. It is constantly kind of being reprinted and in circulation. It's a standard textbook. And what was especially interesting to me, in a way, what is always interesting to me, is this idea of a classic text and how we think about what a classic text is, and whether it continues to speak to us today. Whether it remains sort of relevant and interesting, whether there are still new things to be learned from it. You might think, well, I mean, this book is almost 50 years old. I mean, maybe we know all of this stuff now and we don't need to keep reading it. So I am always interested in the relationship that we have to these kinds of classical texts. But I was especially interested in the way that this book does or does not speak to, describe, apply to contemporary Ukraine and what is happening in Ukraine now. Because this is a text about border, about the idea of borderlands and about border as a space of contact, but also as a kind of tension and difficulty about how a person who lives sort of in the middle of difficult and traumatic histories of invasion or occupation or oppression, how she thinks about her own identity and herself and her history. And so I was interested in whether for Ukrainian students, especially reading this book, would you feel a connection to it? Does it still seem sort of vital, relevant? Are there parts that are especially kind of meaningful for Ukrainians today? Are there parts where you really feel a sense of distance, right? Either in time or in space, where it's like, well, this is a very kind of American way to think about these problems. This does not apply to us. So this is always a question for me, which also means that the class is not in the structure where I know all of the answers, I know everything there is to know, and I tell you or I teach you. Instead, it's a class where you also have a lot of knowledge and expertise and a lot to offer, right? I can't tell you how this book relates to people in Ukraine today. Only you can tell me, right? So the class is really more like a kind of collaborative project of all of us thinking together, right? I see my role as talking, being a kind of space for creating conversation, as being able to explain maybe if there are parts of the text that are confusing, and as sort of provoking or stimulating discussion and inviting you to share thoughts. But I am not the kind of person who knows everything that is just going to tell you what to think about the book. You have to decide all of those things for yourself. And so for some people, this can be kind of strange and maybe a little bit uncomfortable, right? A lot of students in university are used to having a kind of lecture class where they come and the professor speaks to them and they take notes and then they, repeat what they have been told on exams. And so this is a very different kind of classroom setting for some people. And I should say, this is also the case in the US where I teach. That many literature classes are discussion-based and sort of small groups of students talking. But I will often have students, from who are studying math or science or other things. And for them also, this is a new experience and they have to get used to it and it may be a little uncomfortable at first. It is especially, I think, relevant for this book because, I said that it's a classic of feminist theory, and this is true. But when you think about a work of theory, you may imagine a kind of very academic, structured, and formal text. And this is not that way. This is a very stylistically experimental book, a very personal book. She weaves in poetry and memories and all kinds of other things. So it is a book that really embodies this sort of feminist idea that, as we say, the personal is political, that theory is not just a kind of abstract thing that exists somewhere, but that it emerges from your experience, from your life, right? That it is directly relevant to your kind of everyday encounters. And therefore, right, especially for something like feminist theory, that we produce theory by paying attention to our own experiences and paying attention to our own feelings. And that we may have this kind of sense that maybe something is unique to us or individual. This situation is frustrating for me, and I'm having a hard time, and this is a problem with me, rather than this is a moment where various kind of social norms are bumping into each other in my life in an uncomfortable way, right? Where I may notice, like, why is it when I have dinner with my family that women will get up to clear the table and men will stay seated? And how is it that we often don't even think about that, right? We just jump to our feet and start cleaning. And this is not because we are all born with a desire to clean, right? It's a way that kind of cultural assumptions and norms become encoded within our own bodies and our own behaviors. And so theory often begins with a simple act of noticing. And so that is part of why not only are class discussions a space where everybody is sharing their opinions and ideas and beliefs, but also often it's a space where people share their experiences. And this can also feel very strange in a classroom where we are used to like not talking about ourselves or our personal lives, right? Or our, you know, childhood or our family. But sometimes, especially when you're reading a book like this, those stories may be very sort of relevant and meaningful and may help us understand things about these ideas in a new way, right? So I want to try, if you are open to it, to try to read a little bit of this text together and talk about it a little bit. And what I chose is just the very opening, the preface, the first few pages that sort of introduce the book and talk about what it is. And so what I would like to do is to read it together and talk about it a little bit. Maybe, can I screen share? Do I have the permission to do that? Do I have the, yeah, okay. So I will, maybe I will read it out loud, and I'll try to read it kind of slowly. And then we can, it's, you know, it's only these 2 pages, so it's not a lot. And what I would like you to do as I'm reading is to just note it, right? What are you noticing? What are parts that kind of jump out at you? What are things that seem strange or surprising, right? So yeah, I will begin. And I will skip over even though I think it's important, of course, right? All of these names here in the 2, Chela Sandoval, Rosa Maria Villafañe Sosolac. So there is a list of all of these people that this book is to, and to the memory of my father. Gracias a toditos ustedes. This book is dedicated a todos mexicanos on both sides of the border. Let me also say that, well, maybe it's not as much in this preface. There's a little bit, but there are words in Spanish in this book. And you may not know Spanish, and that's okay. You don't have to, don't feel bad. Don't feel like you're supposed to know them. You don't have to look every word up. But we'll talk about that too. Okay. So this book is dedicated a todos mexicanos on both sides of the border. Preface. The actual physical borderland that I'm dealing with in this book is the Texas-U.S. Southwest Mexican border. The psychological borderlands, the sexual borderlands, and the spiritual borderlands are not particular to the Southwest. In fact, the borderlands are physically present wherever 2 or more cultures edge each other, where people of different races occupy the same territory, where under, lower, middle, and upper classes touch, where the space between 2 individuals shrinks with intimacy. I am a border woman. I grew up between 2 cultures, the Mexican with a heavy Indian influence, and the Anglo as a member of a colonized people in our own territory. I have been straddling that Tejas-Mexican border and others all my life. It's not a comfortable territory to live in, this place of contradictions. Hatred, anger, and exploitation are the prominent features of this landscape. However, there have been compensations for this mestiza and certain joys. Living on borders and in margins, keeping intact one's shifting and multiple identity and integrity is like trying to swim in a new element, an alien element. There is an exhilaration in being a participant in the further evolution of humankind, in being worked on. I have the sense that certain faculties, not just in me, but in every border resident, colored or non-colored, and dormant areas of consciousness are being activated, awakened. Strange, huh? And yes, the alien element has become familiar, never comfortable, not with society's clamor to uphold the old, to rejoin the flock, to go with the herd. No, not comfortable, but home. This book, then, speaks of my existence, my preoccupations with the inner life of the self, and with the struggle of that self amidst adversity and violation, with the confluence of primordial images, with the unique positionings consciousness takes at these confluent streams, and with my almost instinctive urge to communicate, to speak, to write about life on the borders, life in the shadows. Books saved my sanity. Knowledge opened the locked places in me and taught me first how to survive and then how to soar. La Madre Naturaleza succored me, allowed me to grow roots that anchored me to the earth. My love of images, mesquite flowering, the wind, Ehecatl, whispering its secret knowledge, the fleeting images of the soul in fantasy, and my words, my passion for the daily struggle to render them concrete in the world and on paper, to render them flesh, keeps me alive. The switching of codes in this book, from English to Castilian Spanish, to the North Mexican dialect, to Tex-Mex, to a sprinkling of Nahuatl, to a mixture of all of these, reflect my language, a new language, the language of the borderlands. There, at the juncture of cultures, languages cross-pollinate and are revitalized. They die and are born. Presently, this infant language, this bastard language, Chicano Spanish, is not approved by any society. But we Chicanos no longer feel that we need to beg entrance, that we need always to make the first overture, to translate to Anglos, Mexicans, and Latinos, apology blurting out of our mouths with every step. Today, we ask to be met halfway. This book is our invitation to you from the new mestizas. So, what are you noticing? What are some things that struck you, that that surprised you, that spoke to you? Can be anything, big or small. Or also, are there any questions where you're wondering, like, what does this word mean, or what is this? Yeah, Igor.
Good evening for you. It's evening currently in Ukraine. What time is it currently at your place?
Here it's 10 in the morning.
Good morning for you. Thank you for conducting this small lecture for us. It's very engaging. I'm very thankful. I am not an expert in Spanish, so I may struggle in some words and I don't know them. But from my personal perception, what I've figured from listening and reading as you read in this couple of minutes, in these 2 pages, is the heavy language of oppression and the need to be heard. Because as we know currently, in the world, there so happen to form a lot of countries, a lot of languages, and a lot of cultures. But what do people from a significantly smaller demographic, the part, maybe even the minority, as we call it, how do they earn a voice when they are placed between the two titans that are so prideful and are so eager to prove themselves correct, as I would put it? And it's actually very interesting to observe this interaction. And I would be pretty interested myself to read this book and to live through this struggle and to find what answers do people strive to find, to understand, to find comfort in this place when they are so exposed to danger, they're so exposed to neglection. So yes, that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, thank you. And I think you're exactly right. This question of I think you put it, how to earn a voice, right? This idea that especially if you're in a, what are called a minor culture, or if you are positioned, as you put it, between two giants, right? This feeling like you have to earn a right to speak, you have to find a way to make your voice heard. And then also, as you brought up, this sense that that part of what this book is about, as you can even see from the preface, is trying to understand what that existence is like, right? Trying to describe it, and also trying to kind of find comfort, find joy, find ways to live, right? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Dominika.
Hello, good evening and good morning to you. I'm really happy to be here. It's more interesting than I thought, and thank you for conducting this conference and your own lecture, which is really nice. My comment would not touch the theme directly, I think, because I would like to mention the style the book was written, because it feels like it is a fictional book, and it is really interesting to read. And unfortunately, the circumstances that the woman was in, they kind of made it sound like fiction, even though the writing style was good itself.
Can you say a little more about what you mean by it made it sound like fiction? Is it like the kind of do you mean it
As
seems
you've said,
real, or it seems beautiful, or
yeah, it seems like, have you said earlier that it is not that much of something academical. It doesn't feel like, a study that you read. It's more like a book that you would like to read, that you would just grab and read somewhere. So it seems interesting. And I know that like the circumstances that it was written in are not so like beautiful as the book may be about. Like, it is interestingly written, but I know it's really there's a sad background, historical background behind it.
Yeah, this is why I was asking you, because when you say it's like a fiction, I wasn't sure if you meant like this seems unreal, like is this invented? Did this happen? But I think what you're saying is more like it feels personal, it feels engaging, it feels like a book that, as you put, that you actually want to read, right? Where maybe academic works can feel sort of
Yes.
formal.
Unfortunately, I do think it is real.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and this, I think,
thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I mean, even this moment where she says, right, this book speaks of my existence, right, which is also, I think, worth noticing, because again, when we think about theory, often we think about something kind of abstract and general, right, that it's for everybody, that it is a way of describing, how people live or how this group lives. And she is instead saying, I am talking about my life, right? My experience. But it is precisely because she is so insistent on her own individual experience that the book paradoxically speaks to a much larger group, right? And becomes far more kind of meaningful as a theory of life because it's so rooted in an individual experience. Yeah. Anna?
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, hi.
Hello, good morning to you. Good evening to those who are in Ukraine right now. So I wanted to not ask, but rather answer maybe that the reason
Anna,
people
we are not
are
hearing you.
a different
Okay.
race.
Oh, there you
Okay.
are.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Um, so maybe the reason that Mexican people are treated in other way, they're discriminated, they're treated like a different race, is because of colorism, because
Mhm.
Mexican people are more tanned and because they're more exposed to the sun. And tanned people are associated with poverty historically. So maybe that's why it was so difficult for the author to live. Maybe that's why there formed a lot of stereotypes around Mexican people.
Yeah, I mean, so part of what she's talking about in the book is very much a kind of racialized difference. And you're exactly right to bring up colorism, right? Where, I mean, it's less to do with like being in the sun as just like melanin in the skin, but it's also particularly in some ways complex in Central America, in Mexico, because there is a sort of group of different cultures coming together, right? So you have an indigenous population, and you have like Spaniards, right, conquistadors, who may be quite fair-skinned, indigenous people who may be brown-skinned, but then also, right, enslaved Africans who are brought into the, then called the New World, who are also dark-skinned. And so all of these people living together and intermixing means that you have people of a range of different skin tones. And there is often a kind of privileging of paler, whiter skin as opposed to brown skin or especially black skin. And one of the things that she's talking about in the book that I think is important and something that it's easy to miss, right, is that we may think about it in terms of the discrimination that Chicanos or Mexicans face from white Americans, and that is very much a part of the book. But also what she's talking about is discrimination or oppression within a Latino community, and within her own sort of her own culture or community, where in particular the kind of pressures of colorism, where she is told like, don't go out in the sun too much so that your skin isn't too dark, where, she says we don't talk about our African, kind of Black heritage, because there is this focus on skin tone. So yeah, racial difference is very much a part of it. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Paulina.
Hello, everyone. Honestly, I'm really happy to be here and participate in such conference because it's my first time. I want to share my opinion about the first pages of this book. And for me, most important thing is that a book catches me from the very first pages and keeps me engaged until the end. I really liked it, and Borderlands feels like, for me, it feels like that kind of book that can do that, and one that makes you think and even maybe helps you to answer the questions you've been carrying inside your mind long before you started reading this. And what stands me out, which idea, I don't know, impressed me the most, that is idea that living in between awakens new parts of the person. So I just want to share about my feelings, I don't know, about my emotions, about Borderlands, about this metaphor, maybe. Is because this topic is really touching, I just wanted to say, and really close to me, close to my impression of about this world, that borders are not just places on the maps, and they exist inside us, and the borders really are influenced on us, maybe. For me, especially for me, this metaphor makes the book more emotional and meaningful, and I'm really grateful. I really want to say thank you to you that you read us the first pages, and maybe certainly I will read this book in the future. Yeah, it's really interested me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad. And it's you identified such a crucial kind of aspect of the book, which is exactly as you say, that borders are not just places on the map, right? That they are also, internal, they can be inside us. And specifically, right, as you put it, it's a metaphor, but part of the complexity and part of what she's trying to think about is the way that borders are both metaphorical and literal, right? That we can think of, so that first paragraph where she says the borderlands are physically present wherever two or more cultures edge each other, where people of different races occupy the same territory, where under, lower, and middle and upper classes touch. And this last part, right, where the space between two individuals shrinks with intimacy, right? What we notice there is how she moves through these different kind of ideas of difference or types of identity, right? Where it's two cultures, it's people of different races, then it's also class difference, right? Where it's, how often are there spaces where class has a physical border, right? Those places do exist, right? If you have, in the United States, we have what are called gated communities, where there are neighborhoods that have a fence and you have to have a code to get inside or be a visitor, right? And this is a way of people who are wealthier saying, this is our space. You cannot come in unless you are invited, right? Which implicitly is a way of saying, this is a space for wealthier people, right? But of course we can also think of like, I don't know, an exclusive country club or, a very expensive restaurant, right? Or I mean, just so ways that class difference becomes physically marked in space. But then also the final part of that sentence, right? The space between two individuals. When we think about two people, this is no longer race or class or culture. This is even just like the space of two human bodies, right? And what is the border between them, and how with intimacy, as they get to know each other, the border shrinks, right? Or rather, not the border shrinks, but you kind of become closer to it. You exist within this border between two things. Right. So the way at the same time, of course, if you have ever tried to travel to, another country, it's like, where's your passport? Where is your visa? Right. There is a very literal way that borders exist and are bureaucratic and, and can be enforced in violent ways. And right. So they are always both metaphorical and literal. And this question of like how we exist within them, right, is part of what she's thinking about. But also, just to briefly add, the final part that you were talking about, or you were talking about in the beginning, that rather than thinking of yourself as being divided or, half this and half that, or being between, that you think of the different parts of yourself as creating a new whole, a new kind of identity. And that is a big part of what this book is trying to understand and theorize, is what she calls this mestiza consciousness, or borderlands identity, that rather than being kind of part of something and part of something else, you form a new sort of identity from these different pieces and the connections between them. And so the kind of sections of the book are about that new identity and how it emerges from retelling history and thinking about language, and writing as an act of creation and a kind of spiritual act of creation, and making art. And so that's the kind of, those are all of the big ideas that the book talks about. But I think maybe I should stop here because there's more information that Izabela and Julia have to give you. So I won't take up, I mean, we can talk about the book for the next 3 hours, but maybe we'll stop here. Thank you all so much for sharing your thoughts and your contributions, especially, you know, when there are like 80 people. I know it can be harder to do and feel intimidating. So I very much appreciate it.
Thank you so much. If we have another question from the students, we might still have time for one more question. Any urgent questions for Professor Bartoszynska?
I am also putting my email address here in the chat. So if you think of a question later or want to email me about something, you have my email address. And then this is also my website if you are interested and want to learn more.
Thank you so much. Yegor, just...
Yes, I do have one more question, one last question. Do you want to answer it?
I mean, it depends what it is, but probably.
Well, it is also about talking about countries and them being separated and the cultures. Like, imagine that in the very, very late future, we will have to position ourselves not as a members of certain society, of certain country, or members certain nationality, but as the representatives of humanity. And our human value will be blurred, and we will all be considered equally human. Well, of course, it's an utopical view of complete equality, but we are talking right now in terms of our physical representation. We will be all humans. And in this bold image of the future, if you were to just share a bit of wisdom, how can we preserve human individuality when we merge into a unified country?
Yeah, this is a great question. And I think that, I guess, the piece of wisdom that I would share is that equality does not have to require sameness. Right? That I think that often we have this idea that the only way that everyone can be equal is if everyone is the same, and that this is the best way to kind of guarantee equality and lack of oppression. And I think that, I mean, this is, of course, this is my personal opinion, but I think that we really have to resist this idea because, exactly as you put it, right? Human individuality and difference is important and is part of what makes the world a kind of beautiful and amazing place, right? So rather than thinking, oh, we have to eliminate all of our difference in order to be equal, I think maybe we can recognize, as you put it, our sort of shared humanity, the fact that we are all humans, but without insisting on this sort of sameness, I would hope, you know.
Yeah, that's a very descriptive answer. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Wonderful presentation. Professor Bartoszynska reminds us how important it is to read, that every time we read the text, it exists for each of us as individuals, but reading can also be a communal experience. And I think this is a very important aspect of the Flying University experience.
I should mention, actually, I have my new book that just came out a few weeks ago is called Reading Together, and it's about reading as communal experience. So very much in this kind of thinking, yeah.
Very apropos. Thank you so much. Yes. And thank you for wonderful questions as well. Yes. So I think we have really managed, thanks to Professor Bartoszynska, to bring the essence of the Flying University experience closer to you. And I hope that you will be following the Flying University and applying to our classes. I'm going to ask now Chris to talk a little bit about the application process. We are, in general, aiming to have 2 sessions every year. We are going to have a mini session in January that is just a couple of classes on issues in philosophy. And there is going to be a regular session that will include several courses, some single book courses, single author courses, perhaps some classes also in history and philosophy. So we encourage you to stay informed about our activities. And Chris, if you could just briefly talk about the application process.
Hi, so Julia has very helpfully shared the screen with our website. So I'm going to post the links to our website in the chat if you guys want to check it out. It includes our past sessions as well, so you can see the types of courses that we've had, and that will kind of give you a good idea of what our spring session will be. Right now we have something that we're referring to as a sort of mini session this winter, because it is focused on philosophy, and it's just 2 courses. So if you would be interested in applying to those, you can apply from the website, or you can apply. I will also post the call for applications, which has the class descriptions, so that also has a link to apply. So right there, that's the call for applications, and I will also post the applications. So I think, as I mentioned, this winter session will be focusing on philosophy. In the United States, students often take courses in fields that they're not necessarily focused on. So even though we're not offering classes in literature, we hope that you'd still be interested in participating. One class is more of an introductory course. So if you haven't taken philosophy classes in the past, it might be something that you'd be interested in. Or if you have some experience with philosophy or would like a bit more of a challenge, there's another course focusing on Kant. Let me just post the application form. And the application is pretty simple. We do ask that you write just kind of a general, why are you interested in taking this course? And that's the hardest part of the application. It's just describing why you want to take the course, why you're interested in it. And that's that, I think, as far as the application is concerned. And if you have any questions at all about the program, you can also write to us directly. I will post my email address right now. There it is. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. So that's that, I think.
Before we conclude, I will also just briefly mention, we already spoke about the essay competition. And as we've said, we're very proud to have awarded these prizes, which are monetary prizes, to 2 Grinčenko students, Andrzej Żurba and Weronika Kowal. We will continue the essay competition. And in addition to that, there's also going to be a creative work prize. Chris, could you say a couple of words about that?
Yeah, so it depends on the course that you're taking, but some professors will let you write a creative piece. That's more relevant for literature courses. Usually we had in this past session, a student wrote a creative piece that a professor was very impressed by, and she is helping the student get the piece published. So the essay competition generally has two categories, which is one, just the essay that you write for the course, and the other is a creative work. So if you write a creative work instead of an essay, it's also judged in a separate category. I don't think this next session will have a creative work, just since the topics are more philosophy focused. I can't guarantee that. Maybe the professors will allow creative works. It's up to them. And there is a cash prize. We're happy to, this is our way of trying to also support Ukrainian students. And the cash prize has generally been $400, so it's not a small amount. That's, I think, it, as far as the essay prize portion is concerned.
Thank you very much. Once again, we are very grateful for Professor Julia Wysznicka's hospitality. Thank you so much for organizing this meeting today. Thank you to all of you for attending. This has been wonderful. So many people have stayed with us throughout the meeting. And we hope to see you in our classes with our best wishes to all of you. Thank you very much.
Oh, and I'll just quickly, I forgot to mention, a very important piece of information. The applications for this winter session are due on December 15th. So there's this weekend and next weekend to apply. And it's a fairly quick application. It shouldn't take more than 20-30 minutes.
Щиро дякуємо. Від імені всього нашого Київського столичного університету імені Бориса Грінченка дякуємо. Від нашої кафедри світової літератури Факультету української філології щиро дякуємо пані Ізабелі, пану Крісу за організацію цього заходу, пані Катажині Бартошинській за чудову розмову з нашими студентами і за прочитання тексту в прямому ефірі.
On behalf of the entire Kyiv Metropolitan Boris Grynchenko University, we sincerely thank Ms. Izabela and Mr. Chris for organizing this event, which is extremely important for Ukraine. And we sincerely thank Professor Katarzyna Bartoszynska for the interesting conversation with the students and for reading the text live.
Щиро дякуємо взагалі всім, хто прийшов зараз в нашу Zoom-аудиторію і за ці світлі емоції, світлі відчуття, які ми зараз з вами відчуваємо від нашої розмови, від того, що ми бачимо одне одного. Ці темні часи для України.
Thank you. І до побачення.
Yeah, thank you all so much.
Слава Україні!
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Героям слава! Щиро дякуємо. Thank you very much.
Thank you.